Hi, I'm Pearl, and this is my podcast, Pearl Escapes Fear of Success. Welcome and thank you for joining me. So, the title of this episode, episode 10, wow, is Taking Time to Make Time. As some of you may have realized, a lot of my titles are actually song lyrics. So, for this one, if you know the name of the song that this lyric comes from, here's a little competition for you. Just drop me the name of the song to my email pearl@pearlescapes.co.uk and I will send you a little treat. So don't worry, there's enough to go round, but I know people like a competition, and yeah, this is a pretty great song that I've pinched the lyric from. So, taking time to make time. What is this episode all about? Well, in terms of fear of success, there are a lot of barriers that we put in our own way. Now, a lot of coaches, say life coaches, motivational speakers, and things like that, will use the word excuses. And in fitness, you'll often hear the phrase, no more excuses, no excuses, things like that. And I'm not a big fan of that because it kind of doesn't explore your situation. It doesn't explore your own personal situation and the things that you are confronting, those barriers that you're confronting. And so I wouldn't call this an excuse. I would call this a barrier. And time is a really amazing concept, both in terms of very deep sort of spiritual principles and mathematical relativity, all these kind of amazing things. Do not worry, I'm not going to go into all of that, okay? Because you don't need to. You don't need to what I would call master your time, okay? And I've also studied time management in terms of, sorry, it's a little bit noisy here today, in terms of quality management, in terms of corporate finance, running big teams and really big, important £1 million, £1 billion deadlines. So I know a lot about time, but that didn't stop me using it as an excuse. That didn't stop me putting time in the way of actually achieving what I really wanted to achieve in life. And I know that I've been through times, periods in my life and situations where time was really impossible. There were just not enough hours in the day. And I was thinking about this morning, and one of the hardest jobs I've ever had in my life has been being a carer, or being supportive to the people I love. And anyone out there who's a carer or who is a parent or has any kind of supporting role in other people's lives will have probably experienced that time of just feeling so conflicted and feeling exhausted, at the end of the day, while still feeling that there's mountains and mountains and mountains to do. And I think the thing is if you start to use expressions like no more excuses and things like that, it's really about, that's kind of like denying the difficulty that you're facing. And we all have, I'd say in our lives, we are all going to have times where we just feel like we're running. And that's natural. And it's part of our life experience that there are times that are incredibly challenging for many, many reasons. Times when it just feels like there are not enough hours in the day, or not enough money, or not enough energy, or we're trying to do things when we really are dragging, when we're really sick, all those kind of things. And when we look at those times, we can say, well, actually, we learn so much from those times. And as a carer, one of the things that I've learned is priorities. You really, really have to, working in an office, really is nothing compared to the times when everything is kind of going off as a carer, when there are a million different things going on. And I think, you feel like sometimes your hands are tied behind your back because you can't do things sometimes you can't do things in a quick and easy way because the person you're supporting, or even yourself, you need things to be done a certain way, because of illness, because of disability, because of any kind of medical condition. And there's some things you just can't rush, you just can't hurry. And it's really important that we're aware of that, and we are compassionate with ourselves when we're having difficulty with time. When we are going through a difficult situation. And so I want to kind of go through a couple of ways of looking at time that will hopefully help us when we're not in those, crisis moments, and also with those crisis moments. And one of the things I've learned about times like that is priorities, of course. There's a lot of stuff that just gets dropped immediately. And you know what it's like. If we think we don't have time, we think we don't have time. And then if you get a phone call from someone you love saying they need you in that moment, everything gets dropped. And you're there in the hospital, or that would have been the normal scheme of things. Or you're there at their house. And actually coronavirus times has been very interesting, because sometimes that's not what we're able to do. It's what we want to do. It's where we feel we should be. We've had to find other ways of supporting and caring, and other ways of getting jobs done. It's been challenging, right? But what we learn in those times is that the things that we think are important, and the things that we often fill our days with, are really not that important in the grand scheme of things. So those crisis times are really important because they show us the truth, and they show us the truth about who we are. Now, a film I'm always kind of coming back to is a really great movie called The Guardian. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's really, really good. And it stars Kevin Costner, Ashton Kutcher. And it's all about the US Coast Guard and the rescue swimmers in the US Coast Guard. And I knew nothing about this when I watched this film. It's absolutely fascinating. And they worked with the Coast Guard to make this film. And for me, it really has a lot of questions in that film, a lot of answers about how we rescue people. And actually, this is the word out to all those people who know that they are a bit of a rescuer, or think that, there's a difference between being a carer and being a rescuer. A rescuer is somebody who kind of feels they have to kind of jump in and save everybody all the time. And this is a great film if you're either of those things, if you're a carer or you're a rescuer. Great film to watch. And it's absolutely amazing. And I'm sitting here and I'm wearing my t-shirt, my sort of army Zumba instructor t-shirt, and this is a role that I have. And you look at this film, you look at what these people do, you think these people are like superheroes. What they do is absolutely mind-blowing. And it's funny because there's a whole thing about swimming and records, making records, and being an Olympic swimmer, being a competitive swimmer. And you think, wow, we know the names of the Olympic swimmers, the people who swim really fast. But we probably don't know the names of rescue swimmers, coast guards who go out and save people's lives. And for me, it's a fascinating film because, again, and it's really like how our role models are shifting during this time, and how we, certainly it felt like for a time, we're really being much more focused on the people, carers, care workers, key workers, supermarket workers, nurses, doctors, people who are working incredibly hard and still are, and doing really long shifts and doing the impossible all the time. And I don't want to spoil it, but there's a really great line in the film between these two people when the sort of the experienced swimmer is training the younger swimmer who's never really been in that life, he's never been out in the open water in a life or death situation. And he says, well, how do you do it? What do you do when there's 6 people in the water, and how do you decide who to save? And the older swimmer says, I swim as hard and as fast as I can to the one who's closest to me, and I get them. and then I swim as hard enough, as fast as I can to the next one. And then, it goes on like that. And it's like, okay. Because the really complicated questions often have very simple answers. And time is like that. Time is like that. And it's about our priorities. And like I say, I can come up with really complicated business systems and plans and spreadsheets. And I've been a production manager in films. I've made independent films. I can do a film schedule. I can do a research and development timeline. I can do all these big things. But one of the things that I've really learned to respect is energy as well as time. So I mean, there's no point me having a whole day to practice Zumba choreography or to be, train my fitness, when really the most I'm going to be able to do is an hour. Any more than that and I'm no good. It's no good. And so very often what we do is we kind of create this thing of thinking, I need time. But say writing, very often, I might need an hour, 2 hours to write the next part of the book. I might need 20 minutes. But by being aware of the energy that I have to put into those things, I can use the time that I have. So I might wake up in the morning and I might slow down, stop, take some time to meditate and ask myself the question of, what's next? Listen to my heart about what's my next priority? What's the most important thing? And sometimes it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Why would I do this thing first? But I trust that intuition. And then I ask myself, do I have the energy to do that? Not just the physical energy, but the emotional energy, the mental energy. And if I do, then that's what I do. And a lot of people always ask me, how did you manage to do all these things? How have you written all these books? How have you made all these films and all the other things that I do? And it's really about that. It's not just about using time, because that's thinking we're like a machine, we're like a factory thing, aren't we? Push the button and the toaster works this way, the coffee machine works this way. We're not like that. I know that some days it's going to take me 5 times as long to do something because I don't really have the energy. And that might be a day where I decide to kind of pootle around with something. Okay, I'm going to go mess around with this and see how far I get. That's okay. That's okay too. Because sometimes there's a value to using that kind of energy to do the less energy important jobs. But for me, I want to talk about this very much as a writer, because I'm talking to new clients now and other authors who are having difficulty, with the landing that plane, landing that first book. And whether it's your first book or your 10th book or whatever, there are often issues with landing it, So you might have been working on it for a while. And there are issues with finishing that first draft. There are issues with taking the next step. And sometimes that's that fear of success of, if I finish this book, what next? If I finish this book, I'm going to have to show it to someone. If I finish this book, I've kind of promised myself I'm going to talk to agents or I'm going to approach publishers. So when I finish this, I'm going through the next gate and then into something else, into something unknown. And I remember I met this great guy, an author, at an event, and he said he was very lucky. He had a lot of interest from publishers and agents about his books, and his thing was, he said, "Oh, but I'm bored with it. I'm bored with it. I want to write something different now." So he had done about 80% of this first draft, and he'd got this interest, But then he wanted to go off and start something new. And I said, well, how many books have you written? He said, well, I've kind of written about 3, but I always kind of, at this stage, I always then want to go on to the next one and do that. So I found that quite interesting. And, you know, I may be completely wrong, because I often look at things through this lens of fear of success, and I think, well yeah, why won't you finish your book? But I know that way back when, I was a great starter, and I used to start books all the time, and I would write like the first sort of 3 or 4 chapters, and then I would lose steam, Now looking back, I can see, with what I know about publishing, it would have been great if I'd have taken those first 3 chapters every time I finished them and sent them off to a publisher, sent them off to an agent. Because that's usually as much as they want to see of a book. They want to see that. And I thought, well, actually, if I, you know, in a way, what I was doing back then was perfect for the traditional publishing world, in that I was creating samples. But what happened was I wasn't that same thing of like running out of steam. And at the time, I would have said to myself, what I was doing was kind of feeling that, what's the point? No one's going to read this. What's the point? No one cares. What's the point? This is useless. What's the point? I don't think I can finish this book. Whereas if I had been able to get out of my own way, I would have been able to see quite clearly, and it was all around me. I can look back and I can say, well, you know, I kind of knew that. If I had been able to see more clearly, I would have been able to say there is fantastic value in having all this material, all this content, all this work, and I can start building relationships with agents, with publishers, you know, and if any one of those expressed enough interest in those chapters, offered me an advance or something like that, I think you could bet your life I would have finished those books. With a little bit of, you know, a little bit of support, a little bit of interest, I probably would finish those books. I don't regret it now, because I look back and I think, you know, I'm really glad for the path that I've gone on. But very often, you know, when I look back, I think of myself back then, I think I just couldn't see it. I just couldn't see how close I was to landing a book deal, how close I was to that. And that's why my ego said, no, let's go and do something else. So I didn't actually even have to write anymore, apart from a submission letter. I was already there. And so often when we look back, we can say, well, actually, I had everything I needed. I was in heaven. I was right on the doorstep of success. But I just didn't knock. Or even the door was open and I just didn't walk through. And so often that's the case. When we look back, we realise that we didn't need a great deal of time. We just needed to see, you know, to kind of see that way through. And like I said, I'm comfortable with that I made kind of that mistake, because I went on a different path. And there are other times, for example, when I was working on a big series of books that I had, you know, I did 9 very detailed, very involved and full colour and lots of graphic design, everything. Those books that I did, I was working kind of flat out on those, and I was, you know, the amount of time it took to do those was intense. It was so intense. And at that time, really, it just kind of took over my world. It was just, I had a calling and I was just so focused on that, and I was just really 100% on that all day. And looking back, it's hard for me to kind of think, you know, how I managed that really intense year or so of everything going into these books. But actually, funnily enough, when I look back, you know, that's kind of what I did in corporate finance, when I was doing loads and loads of presentations, and I was working flat out on all the design, and I was, you know, formatting it, and I was doing all this stuff. And I think, wow, that was a great training, Because when I'm doing this book and I'm doing this kind of thing, I have all that experience, all that practice. And one of my teachers says to me about me and about the way I view life is I always think that nothing is ever wasted. That all these kind of weird things that I've done, all these kind of weird experiences out there often come back and are useful at a different time. And that's really useful if we're thinking at times we're doing stuff, we think, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my time on doing this? Very often we're going to learn something that's going to be incredibly useful, and it's something we desperately need to know. So I also feel like we have to hold our time lightly. We have to hold time lightly, because if we don't give ourselves the time to explore, then we follow all the sort of established wisdom, or we're doing things because it's the way that we did it before and that's how we learned to do it before. And we don't look around for the shortcuts. We don't look around and see that actually that doesn't work anymore. We don't look around and say, well, actually that's counterproductive. You know, that's not really a good idea for me. So that exploring time is so important. That time to sort of wander around and really kind of get the lay of the land and see what's going on. And I think you can see that very clearly with something like this year, coronavirus, and how we've had to adjust so quickly. And so what's been very useful, I find with my friends and my family, is that we've talked to each other and shared knowledge about, where do you get this? How does this work? You know, is so-and-so working properly? Can I get my delivery here? And lots of other information about, you know, when is the pharmacy busy? When am I going to have to spend an hour queuing? And when am I going to have a 5-minute wait if there's nobody that, you know, but usually there's nobody there at that time. So we've needed to explore a new world and a new way of doing things. And for me, you know, a big part of a new world has been the moment that Zumba said, hey, you can teach online. And so immediately I'm learning loads of new stuff, but then also using a lot of my film experience, using a lot of my internet experience to, you know, to make that time work for me. And also having had enough experience of working on, you know, following other instructors on a DVD, on a small screen, to know what's easy and what's difficult. So all that time I was building up that experience without knowing that it was going to be so useful. So there's a lot of times we could be reading a certain book, and it's very famous. One of the famous examples is, I think it was Steve Jobs, who went when he was at college, or when he was kind of not quite at college, and he decided to go to calligraphy courses, calligraphy classes. And then, of course, when he became involved with Apple, he used that experience of different fonts and things like that to create something within the computer world that really revolutionized things. So nothing is ever wasted, I would say. Even often I find, even just sitting around watching some TV and whatever, will either make me think, oh yeah, that's quite useful, or it will make me think, okay, this is so boring, I'd rather be working. Let me go and do some more work. My work is more interesting than most TV, to me, anyway. Okay, so let's just go through some stuff, because guys, if you are struggling like with time and all this kind of stuff, I don't want to leave you without giving you some really like basic and easy tools. And like I would say, for me, the most important thing is to listen to my heart as to what's most important. And that could be something like, just go watch TV, go watch that movie you've been thinking of watching. And it's amazing when I do that, how many times something will pop up that's useful. Or even just reading a book, and I'll think, oh yeah, I'm seeing a new perspective on something. And really examining whether you actually have the energy to do something. And I think the more times we ask ourselves that question, you know, the more truthful the answer becomes. Because, you know, I still struggle after all these years. I still struggle with getting my body into my virtual class here. So for example, if Monday morning's easy because I have students turning up at a certain time, because that's a live stream class. And it's easy and it's hard, because often that's the one where I'm dragging the most. And I always say it's like part of me gives up, because it knows that I've got to do this class, and as soon as I start doing this class, I'm going to just feel so joyful. So the part of me that's kind of like, I don't know, the cheerleader of me, it has a little holiday, you know, and I'm kind of dragging and I'm going like this, boom, 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 boom. And then as soon as I hit the button and somebody else is in the room, even if it's a virtual room, the magic happens, and I don't need to push it. I don't need to push it, because it's that group energy that then gives me the buzz to then deliver like my best. And I love that experience. I love that magic of it. But there are other times. So there are other times when I'm recording material. There are other times when I'm training, when I'm practicing, when I'm just doing my workout for me. And the same stuff always comes up. I'm too tired. I don't have the energy. I don't feel very good. And it's really, you know, so much of the work that we do in life, so much of the work we do in confronting and overcoming fear of success is knowing when our ego, our mind, is telling us a lot of porcupines, a lot of lies. And it's just trying to stop us from being joyful. It's just trying to stop us from being truthful. It's trying to stop us from being authentic. Because the ego kind of wants to be in charge. And when we're feeling alive, when we're doing our thing, when we are 100%, the ego has to shut up. There's no room for it anymore. It gets squished down. So that lie of, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to do Zumba, is a lie. And I know it. And I recognize it now. It's like a ding, 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 ding. It says, okay. And the same thing goes when it says, oh, no, you don't have time, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing the other. Because I know that there's nothing more important than my health. Even when I'm struggling with all the hours of the day and trying to, you know, support other people, I have learnt to my cost how close to disaster I have come from supporting everybody else and not myself. How close to disaster I have come by not taking time to eat and hydrate and just take some time out. And how close to disaster I've come, you know, cycling around, teaching all these different classes. And I'm very lucky that I haven't had worse experiences. I'm very lucky that I didn't end up in hospital myself. So sometimes that lie, that ego lie of I don't have the time, I rush, I need to get this done, this is important, I need to get this done, is very dangerous. Because it pushes us to do things and to expend energy, because the mind, the ego is telling us, got to do this, this is important, this is important, this is important. And what it's actually doing is putting us in danger. And it's very, very important that we stop and we say, hang on. When I'm pushing myself beyond my energy level, when I'm using up all my time, to falsely support things that actually will be fine without me, I'm actually being a little bit self-sabotaging. I'm being a little bit self-destructive. And I'm not allowing, my authentic self to run things. And I think that's why it's so important to think about time, because it's such a big lie. And I know because I've used it on myself so many times. But sometimes it's the truth, because it's the day-to-day that we've constructed. And one of the things I would say is, back when I was teaching, full time, I remember there were weeks when I would teach 16 classes, and looking back, I know that the reason why I taught so many classes and I was so, in inverted commas, successful was because I just couldn't say no. I knew how important the work that I was doing was to people, and it was important, and it did support them, and it was great, and I was giving something really from myself, but I was giving too much. And it's very difficult to stand up to people and say no, and say, actually, no, I'm going to teach 12 classes, I'm going to teach 10 classes, and you will have to come to a different class. And it's very difficult because people will say, I can't because of this, I can't because of that. But you can't be there for everybody, because, or at least you can't be there live for everybody 24/7. Because you need to sleep, you need to eat, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that happened in 2012, this is the London 2012 Olympiad, and I was involved in that as a dancer, as a Zumba instructor. I know, I can't believe I was actually a dancer in the London Olympiad. Can you believe it? I was, that's quite exciting. And weirdly enough, just this in there, I did once also compete at international level as a skateboarder, and I won competitions, and I won because I was the only girl skateboarding. But anyway, I was never very good. But I was involved in this London Olympiad, and I did not take a day off for 6 weeks. So I was dancing, I was teaching every day for 6 weeks, because my normal rest days were rehearsals, my normal rest days were performances in like Trafalgar Square, and it was intense, it was really intense. And all I kept saying to myself was, I will take care of myself, I will take care of myself. But my body was aching, I was in a lot of pain, and I had really bad shoulder pain as well, really bad shoulder pain. And the first morning that I got up and I had a day off, or I had the morning off, my shoulder pain was so bad, and I couldn't sleep because my shoulder pain was so bad. And I went online and I did my NHS, click yes or no if you got this, click yes or no. And because I was over 40, because I had shoulder pain, upper body pain, it said, go to A&E directly, go to emergency right now. And I did that. And it was very lucky because I walked in, I had a lovely doctor, there was hardly anyone around. She put me straight through, and I got like an ECG, whatever, the heart monitor thing, they put it on me. And I think they saw my note, so they saw that I'd given my brother a kidney, and I always get points for that when they see it on my records, which is quite good. It's like a little gold star that sits there forever. And I went in, and they were waiting. I was waiting for the results. I think they'd done some blood work. I don't know. So I was sitting there on my own in this little room, and a nurse came in, and she said to me, "Hello." She said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And my heart just dropped. Everything. I was like, oh no, it's going to be so bad. They're going to give me a cup of tea. Oh no, oh no. I thought they must have really bad news for me because of this. And she said, no, it's all right, you're fine, you're perfect. She said, you just, we're just a bit quiet today, so I thought I'd make you a cup of tea. And I was like, oh, I'm not dying, thank God. But it gave me a wake-up call. And it took me, honestly, about 6 months of stretching, of exercising, of doctors, of physio, all that kind of thing, to actually get rid of all this muscular pain in my shoulders. I had really injured myself. I don't even really know what it was. My physio said it was actually a combination of things. That things had hit a peak, and I hadn't taken the time to stop and take care of myself. because work was too important. I was doing something that I felt was too important, which ended up with me going into A&E, which ended up with me having 6 months, because I couldn't take a day off for 6 weeks. And I really learned from that, And so one thing I always remember is, you know what, let me take care of myself. Please, God, let me take care of myself. Because I don't want to end up in A&E. I don't want to end up having months of pain because I just couldn't take a day off. I just couldn't stretch myself out. I didn't take time to go and see a physio. I didn't go and take myself off for a massage. And so I think the thing is that really the lesson for me, and I hope for you, is to be so honest with yourself about how you're feeling and your time and where we're putting it, where you're investing it. It doesn't take that long to write a book when you spent so much time exploring. And people always confuse the time it takes to write a book with the research time and the actual writing time. When I wrote, my first non-fiction took me 8 years because it was about kidney donation and it was so hard to write. And I had a lot of other things going on. When I wrote Meditation for Angry People, which is one of my most popular non-fiction books, that took me 8 hours to write the first draft. Because everything that I wrote down, I had been exploring and playing with and practicing and using in my own life for probably a couple of years. So I knew it, and I knew it well. And then getting it onto the page was not that difficult. So when you've been living stuff for long enough, it's not the time that gets in the way, it's the ego telling us that we don't have time. So I'm going to go now, but just to remind you, when you think you don't have time, just take a minute and really look deeper, listen to your heart, and use your energy wisely. And send me the answer to that competition. Take care. I hope it helps. Lots of love. See you soon.